Hey Robin, how are you?
Hey Scott, hey, happy Taco Tuesday.
As usual, happy Taco Tuesday to you as well. How are things going?
Oh, things are going great. I am so excited I get to see you tomorrow.
I know, super looking forward to this week. For those that don't know, we've got the big MIEE and Showcase School Summit Meetup, Learning Exchange, whatever we're calling it in Atlanta this week. Really pumped to see you and all of our friends from around the country for sure.
Yeah, first opportunity to get a bunch of folks back together in real life and be able to celebrate the amazing work of all these educators and school leaders across the country. So that's what I'm most looking forward to right now.
Yeah,
But I should say most looking forward because actually I'm looking forward to our guest first tonight and then the excitement for
there you go.
tomorrow and all the things that are unfolding there. So
Yeah, and I think, I know you and I get so much of a boost and an emotional and mental jolt from being around passionate educators. And certainly our guest today, Melissa, a good friend of ours, certainly fits that mold. Super excited to hear from her about all the great things going on in her world.
absolutely. So I'm pleased to bring our guest on tonight. She's actually a member of my team here at Microsoft. She is my go-to trusted compass for everything higher education. She came to us here at Microsoft Melissa, are we now at month 10 for you? Right about?
Yeah.
Right about month 10 here being at Microsoft. So we recruited Melissa to come over and join us at Microsoft Education from MUSC, where she did amazing work. So she sits on my team as a senior industry executive supporting our higher education business. She leans into a lot of work around research and is really just growing her brand and shaping it so deeply in this space. And I'm just so proud to have her on our show tonight and let you all hear from this amazing human being that I get to network and learn from each day.
Oh, thanks for having me, y'all. I'm excited about this conversation.
Super happy to have you here. Thanks for your time. And, our audience is predominantly K-12. We've been fortunate to start to bring the conversation towards higher ed. But for those who aren't as familiar with the higher ed space, and certainly in your role, tell everybody about your role a little bit and maybe some of the big, initiatives or projects that you're kind of currently working on in that role.
Before she does, let me also just connect the dot here too.
Okay.
Is even if our audience is primary K-12, what are we doing in K-12, right? We're preparing our kids for their next steps, whether that be the workforce,
Totally,
whether it be higher education, whether it be community college. So this is kind of like, saying, oh, well, I'm only an elementary teacher. I don't really care what you guys do in junior high or in high school. Like we should always be working up and down, right? So our higher education should be looking into our K-12 institutions, seeing what's going on and vice versa. We're a team. We're all in this to better the lives of students. At the end of the day, that's what all this education thing is about. So, I encourage everybody that may be a K-12 listener to lean in here where it may be a little bit more uncomfortable for you because it's actually when we grow the most. So anyway, I'm just gonna make that connection and then turn it over to you, Melissa. Tell us about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, I want to make a connection too. So both of my parents were elementary school teachers, retired now, and I'm so lucky because now they poured their love and all of what they've learned in their entire careers into my children, my very young children. So I'm very lucky. But I tried to stay away from education in my career as much as I could because I thought I don't want to be like my parents, right? I don't want to go into education. There's no money in education, right? Like that's what everybody says. So I thought I was going to be a big, rock star architect. So I got my bachelor's in architecture and I thought, this just isn't for me. I don't want to sit behind a computer all day and do red lines. And, while this is creative and design, I'm not really impacting anybody through this business, right? So then I went on to my master's in kind of student affairs area. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. The way that people develop in their educational years and specifically in higher education is so influential in the rest of their lives, right? Like we're in higher education, we get to, in education in general, we get to impact the next generation of, researchers, right? Or the next generation of teachers, the next generation. And I think that that's so powerful. And so I landed in education because I wanted to leave a legacy. And I mean, I'm very early in my career still, but I want to leave a legacy in everything that I do. And so I came to Microsoft because of that. I left my tenure track position at MUSC to have a bigger impact, to leave a legacy. And so in my role, I get to do that. I get to work with higher education institutions across the US on anything and everything around the disruptions that they might be having. So that's a real passion area of mine. Is we're living in a world and a time when everything is uncertain, right? So we need to create stability. We need to create plans for the future. And how do we do that? So I like to do that at kind of 3 levels with the the entire institution. How do we look at that? And then with faculty, how do we drive future of teaching modalities with leveraging innovative technologies in the classroom that excite both the faculty and the students and can actually exponentially increase learning in that space. And then from that student level, how do we again leave a legacy and empower them for the future? So that's part of my role. The other part, I get to focus on academic research, and that's really exciting for me because that's where, we're changing the world, right? Higher education faculty are truly impacting society in the research that they're doing. They're asking big, bold questions, and I get to help them kind of think through how to ask those questions bigger and bolder by leveraging the cloud. And that is, to me, again, super exciting. It's leaving that legacy. It's what we're all in education to do, right? So I just am so thankful that I get to do that every day.
So Melissa, as you're working with these institutions across the United States, in higher ed specifically, what are you hearing from them? What are their hot topic concerns, the big issues that they're trying to solve? And I know that may be a little bit different from a researcher perspective versus just a higher education institution perspective. And maybe you can kind of touch on an example from each of those things. But what are these top priorities and concerns that they're system-wide trying to face? And then also, I just want to hear, and have our audience hear, one example of something really amazing that you've seen with these researchers do with cloud technologies.
Yeah. So I think everybody in education at all levels is burnout from disruptions. And so it's kind of, how do we innovate through disruptions, innovate through burnout. And it's hard to think further in that innovation sort of mindset, right? Like we're always pushing to do bigger and better when we can't even get that foundation, the fundamental pieces in place of my life, right? Like I just need to wake up in the morning and get to class with a cup of coffee, right? So I think we're all kind of in that same world. So I think there's kind of this friction at a lot of institutions of we want to do more, right? We want to move up to an R1 status, which in higher education can kind of be that pin of research status for the institution, or we want to be, we want some certificate for how we're the most innovative in our teaching and pedagogy. We want to have fellows that are, involved in different agencies. We want to have more, but the foundation is still shaky. So I think that's a big thing that's happening right now in higher education that I think, especially, even in K-12 is translational. So we're all trying to do more and figure out how to just wake up in the morning and get there. So I think that's one thing. And another thing that I'm hearing a lot is just retention and retainment of not only students, but faculty, staff, good people in higher education. How do we make sure that the business of higher education can evolve so that we can kind of look towards the future? We can train the students for the future so that when they come out, they're marketable, they're, investing back in our state, they're staying here, we've got the jobs, all this pipeline talk. That's a tough thing to build out. And I think both of those things that I kind of talked about, they're both culture changes, right? So we can't kind of continue to do higher ed in the same way that we've been doing higher ed for the past few centuries, right? Like we've got to change. And I know everybody says maybe the pandemic is the catalyst, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just fuel on the fire that was already lit, right? Like maybe we can start to look forward and build that foundation, innovate for the future. And so I've been working with a lot of amazing researchers over the past few months. And again, that's the highlight of my job, is just getting to have those real conversations on impact in society. two stand out to me. The first one is a group over in the West that built their technology on top of Azure specifically. And that's where I really, like, this was the first project that I really worked on when I came into Microsoft, where I really understood the power of the cloud and what it could actually do. And so they've built this system where individuals with mobility challenges in the cities can actually have kind of Google Maps, but for people with mobility challenges. And so how do I get around? How do I actually navigate a city that doesn't have a curb cut in a certain place? How do I get from point A to B if I can't go across this street in my wheelchair? So having that sort of power, right? Like that sort of power and societal impact, again, they're leaving a legacy. How powerful is that? And the coolest thing about this is they had a very small grant that they scaled, and they kept getting more grants, and they kept putting their research out there for society to see. And people keep funding them because they see the value in it. So I think that's so cool. And then the second one is two PhD students. And I love this story. And I just absolutely adore everything about what they've done because they're PhD students, right? They're in the throes of their very, very hard times of their kind of academic years. And they developed a power app on Azure, which is super cool. And it's to help people in disadvantaged areas have kind of a shorter commute in the city. So again, kind of thinking about how are we impacting society? It's bigger than just, running numbers on a computer. Like that's not research anymore, right? Like how are we actually translating that into what people are doing? And I'm getting to see the power of the cloud and how that is actually impacted people. And I always, everybody asked me when I came on to Microsoft, like, well, what's the cloud? And I'm like, the cloud? Like, let's talk about the cloud, right? So, but now I have these tangible sort of examples of how people are again impacting society through some of the tools that they have in their toolbox. And that, again, that legacy is just so cool.
There's two thoughts that have been running through my head the whole time you were talking. One is I feel so fortunate to do this show because we just get to sit here and have a front row to listen to passionate educators. And I just love, you talk about preparing kids for the future and all the skills and that kind of thing. But my gosh, love what you do. Like you talk about finding, leaving a legacy and making connection and that kind of thing. It's so important to love what you do and find connection in that. So just on one level, thank you for sharing that with us and with everybody. And the second thought is, I don't know why I didn't place this earlier, but I remember as an undergrad at University of Arizona, them making such a huge deal about being a Research One university. Mm-hmm. And as a little 19-year-old, pre-education major, I had no idea what that meant. I learned throughout my career, and then I feel fortunate to be, doing some work with you of late. And I see the power of what that research brings. And in particular, you've been engaging with a group of academic researchers, and you all had an event in person last week. And the conversations that happen in that room and the minds and the way they think along the lines of the projects you were just talking about is really amazing. So I wondered if you would just touch on that group briefly and talk about the power. We always talk about community, right? How important it is to bring folks together. Just share a little bit about that group and the impact they're having right now.
Yeah. Before I joined Microsoft, I was part of the MIE group. So I appreciate that from the higher ed perspective, and community was always really important to me. So when I came onto Microsoft, I was very fortunate to kind of inherit a community and kind of rebuild it, restructure it. Like, what does community actually look like for researchers? What's that kind of the common thread between all domains, right? So we're looking at ag science, we're looking at engineering and all the different areas. How do we bring people together to have conversations about big, bold questions, right? So leaving a legacy, societal impact, all of those things. And so we just had a meeting with our Microsoft Academic Research Community Advisory Board. We call it MARCAB, which is a great community to just bring people together to have conversations, to talk about challenges. For example, one of the biggest challenges facing researchers right now is how do we share our data? How do we manage our data, especially with some of the new NIH federal guidelines that are coming out? We need to be able to manage our data. We have to put it in our grant. Simple things like that. It's a common denominator that everybody's kind of dealing with as a researcher, but having those conversations as a footing, bringing people together, finding inspiration from one another, I think was the best part, because it's not because I'm in engineering, I need to talk to other engineering, faculty about their engineering research. It's translational. For example, we went to the Inclusive Tech Lab on the Microsoft campus. And if you're ever in Redmond, oh my goodness, please go there. It was the best experience I think I've ever had in my entire life. And I felt like, I think the tour was more really for me than it was for them, but I think everybody got something out of it. But we found so many ways to translate the heart of what Microsoft does, which is inclusive tech. How do we enable everyone to do more into research? And so a few of our researchers were talking with them about how do we bring in, some of the work that they're doing around AI and ML in that space, and how can they partner with them to do more in the inclusive tech space? Just amazing to see, again, that societal impact, the underlying value that we all bring to research. And I think in this community, specifically right now, we need to have that. We need to have, how can we come together, share ideas, share inspiration, share hardships, and overcome them together, hopefully.
So what I hear you saying is it doesn't really matter if you're, a K-12 educator, a nurse, a researcher, a doctor, a police officer. Community is important. It's kind of a big deal. It's about finding your people, making connections, getting, and more importantly, getting outside of your comfort zones or what you see as the norm, right? I think that's what's so powerful with some of these communities is, you might have your local community with the group of faculty that you work with on a day-to-day basis, but that's what you all have in common. So it's also going outside of that and seeing like, oh, what are people over here doing? Or these researchers, what is this researcher in engineering doing versus this researcher in genomics doing? And how can we learn from each other and keeping some of the guiding principles consistent and the same, right? The fabric that connects us all, right? It is the reason why we're all here in the education space is to really improve and leave this world a better place than we found it at the end of the day. Well, I am so excited to learn from you, Melissa, and thanks so much for sharing with us. I definitely know you are leaving a legacy, but more than you leaving a legacy, you're empowering others to create their own legacies to leave behind. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think that's the reason why I joined Microsoft, right? Is to do more, to have that bigger impact, to join communities even outside of my comfort zone, right? So I would encourage everybody to try something different, to go different places.
So speaking of trying something different or trying to learn something new, for everybody who's watching today, and maybe they're a K-12 audience, maybe they're a parent, maybe they're a student, and maybe they're in the higher education faculty. If they want to learn more about some of the work that you're leading and some of these groups of researchers and higher education institutions that are reshaping the way education can look and feel and the experiences that we're providing students, where should they go? Where should they start? Can you give us a little couple places that are your favorites to go?
Yeah. So I'll do a shameless plug. I have a bi-weekly LinkedIn newsletter that I try to communicate all the things Microsoft, because there's so much, right? Like exactly like this. There's so much going on. So how do we create those connections for educators? I do focus on higher education, but it can be, any educator, anybody. So recently I had I do 5-minute interviews with folks as well. She's a nurse educator and just doing amazing work in rural South Carolina. So I just wanted to chat with her about, how she's working with the Gullah Geechee community, right? So just things like that where we can get inspiration from other people. So my LinkedIn newsletter, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anybody, share resources. That's a great place to start. I also do a lot of work. I post a lot for just, what's happening in research, because there's so much happening. But I would recommend if, after you kind of sit down and digest all of this, and you're like, maybe, I want to kind of see what else is out there. We do have a research summit that's coming up that I would recommend signing up for. It's free. It's for anybody. So this is not just higher ed. This is not just Microsoft. This is anybody can sign up for this and get inspiration for the future. And I think that that's the most powerful thing for me. I'm not a truly technical person, but I enjoy these conversations because it gives me inspiration in what I do every day. So I would say sign up for that as well. I would be happy to connect and help anybody find more resources as well.
Yep. And I know both Melissa and I have both shared information about that research summit on our LinkedIn. So you can find the link and register yourself to attend that as well. It's no cost. And like I said, the more information that you can, arm yourself with, the smarter you are. And, it's always a great opportunity to go into some uncomfortable spaces.
Yes, there it is. That's our challenge for the day, is to go in some uncomfortable spaces. You guys have your, community meeting coming up tomorrow that you were talking about. Find new people. Don't hang out with the same people, right? Go find new people in your MIE community. It's huge. I remember being part of that community and I thought, I'm not going to connect with anybody because I'm in higher ed. But I found so many people that I connected with just on the basis that we wanted to leave a legacy, right? So we all are here for the same reason. So get out of your comfort zone. Find some new people. Make some new friends. It'll be fun. It's going to be a great week for y'all.
Well, I'm looking forward to it for sure. Before we let you go, Melissa, are you down for a little bit of lightning round?
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
Yeah. Speaking of taking you out of your comfort zone with a little bit of a challenge, perfect segue.
Woo! All right, let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to start you off with what food can you not live without?
Sushi.
Okay. If you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be?
My home. I love my home. I'm a homebody. That's so bad.
Okay. What's your favorite game?
I don't like games. That's so bad. I don't like games at all. I absolutely loathe them. I can't do chess. I don't like cards. I just like to, yeah. Wow.
You like living in the real spaces.
I'm sorry. This is a safe space, right?
100% safe space. All right. Toss them over to Scott now.
If you could take your family anywhere on a trip, where would you go?
Oh, Disney World. We love it so much. I've got two very young kids, like I said, so they're all Disney all the time. Yes.
Easy entertainment with little kiddos, right?
Yes, exactly.
Love that. And we will get you out of here on this one today. Who inspires you most in your life right now?
My daughter, she's 5 years old and she has just the most confidence in the world. And I love it. She makes me patient. She makes me kind. And she reminds me just to have fun. And I think that that's important because sometimes life can be crazy. So we all just need to remember just to have a little bit more fun.
Love it.
That's great advice for sure.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Melissa, and obviously joining me on a daily basis and in the trenches, rolling up our sleeves and really trying to do the great work here at Microsoft Education. So I'm so excited to, be celebrating your 1 year in just a couple of months. It seems like just yesterday, but it'll be here before we know it.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Appreciate it. And Robin, enjoy the rest of your day. Looking forward to seeing you and all of our friends at our big event this week. And everybody have a wonderful day and we'll chat with you soon.
Sounds great. See you tomorrow.
Take care, everybody.